I always call that the mother of all unintended consequences for Russian strategic thinking. If Russia had one objective with Sweden and Finland, it was to keep them outside of the alliance, and by Russia's full-scale invasion, now we are part of NATO.
What if I told you that Russia's biggest strategic mistake was not only invading Ukraine, but accidentally pushing one of Europe's most capable neutral powers straight into NATO? For more than 200 years, Sweden stood outside military alliances. It remained quiet, neutral, independent, and careful. But in 2024, everything changed. Sweden joined NATO, and suddenly the balance of power in Northern Europe shifted almost overnight. This is not just another country joining an alliance. This is a nation with advanced fighter jets, stealth warships, Arctic-trained soldiers, one of Europe's most strategic islands, and a coastline that can influence the entire Baltic Sea. That is why this story matters, because Sweden did not enter NATO empty-handed. It entered with experience, geography, technology, and a warning that the Baltic and Arctic regions are no longer distant corners of Europe. They are now the front line of a new security era. For decades, Russia wanted Sweden and Finland to stay outside NATO. That was one of Moscow's long-term strategic goals. But after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the opposite happened. Finland joined, Sweden joined, and now NATO's northern map looks completely different. In my opinion, this is the mother of all unintended consequences. Russia tried to weaken NATO's influence near its borders, but instead it helped create a stronger, wider, and more united Northern Alliance. Now look at the map. Sweden sits right in the heart of the Baltic Sea. It has the longest coastline on that sea, thousands of islands, direct access to the Arctic region, and a position that connects Northern Europe with the Baltic states. This means Sweden is not just another member. Sweden is geography, technology, and military experience combined.
The most important piece of that geography is Gotland. Gotland is often called the unsinkable aircraft carrier of the Baltic Sea. Whoever controls Gotland can monitor air routes, sea routes, military movement, and supply lines across the region. If NATO ever needs to reinforce Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania, Gotland could become a critical hub. That is why Sweden's NATO membership is so serious. It gives the alliance more eyes, more reach, and more options in one of Europe's most sensitive regions. But Sweden's power is not only about location. It is about the type of military Sweden built while it was neutral. Because Sweden spent decades preparing to defend itself alone, it developed weapons and tactics designed for its own harsh terrain. It built systems for forests, islands, shallow waters, freezing temperatures, and dispersed operations. Take the Visby-class corvette. This is not a normal warship. It is a stealthy, multi-role vessel designed for the Baltic Sea. It can hunt submarines, support air defense, and operate in shallow coastal waters where larger ships may struggle. In a region filled with islands and narrow maritime routes, that kind of ship is extremely valuable. Then there is the Combat Boat 90 and Sweden's Amphibious Corps. These forces are built for the place where sea meets land. They can operate around islands, coastlines, archipelagos, and hidden routes that outsiders may not understand. This is local knowledge turned into military power. That is what makes Sweden dangerous to any aggressor. It does not just bring equipment, it brings experience from the exact environment where a future conflict could happen.
Now move from the sea to the sky. Sweden's Gripen fighter jets are known for agility, range, and the ability to operate from unusual places, including road bases and civilian infrastructure. This matters because in a modern war, air bases are among the first targets. If aircraft are tied to a few predictable runways, they become vulnerable. But if an air force can disperse, hide, refuel, rearm, and launch from different locations, it becomes much harder to destroy. That is the Swedish mindset. Survive the first strike, keep moving, and keep fighting. And that mindset is now inside NATO. But the story gets even more serious in the north. The Arctic and high north are becoming more important every year. Extreme weather, long distances, limited roads, darkness, and freezing temperatures make this region brutally difficult. Not every military can operate there. Sweden can. The Norrbotten Brigade is trained for Arctic warfare. Its soldiers understand cold weather survival, long-range movement, and combat in conditions that can break both machines and people. This gives NATO something very specific: real northern endurance. In a time when Russia is increasing military attention in the Arctic, Sweden's experience becomes more than useful. It becomes essential.
And then there is space. Most people do not connect Sweden with space and defense, but they should. The S-Range Space Center in northern Sweden is one of Europe's key space facilities. In a modern conflict, satellites are not luxury tools. They are used for communication, surveillance, navigation, weather data, drone control, and battlefield awareness. If ground networks fail, satellite communication may become the lifeline. If drones and unmanned systems are operating, space-based support becomes critical. So Sweden's role is not only about tanks, jets, and ships. It is also about the invisible battlefield above us. This is why Sweden's NATO entry is bigger than headlines. It closes a major strategic gap in Northern Europe. It strengthens Baltic Sea defense. It adds Arctic capability. It increases air power. It improves maritime surveillance. And it brings a country that already knows how to fight in difficult environments. But here is the suspenseful part. This also raises the stakes. The Baltic Sea is now more heavily watched, more militarized, and more strategically sensitive than before. Undersea cables, energy infrastructure, shipping lanes, and island territories are all becoming part of the security puzzle. The danger may not begin with a massive invasion. It may begin with sabotage, cyber attacks, jamming, drones, shadow fleets, or one incident at sea that spirals out of control.
That is the new battlefield. Not always tanks crossing borders. Sometimes it is a cable cut under the sea, a radar jammed in the sky, a drone seen near a port, a ship moving suspiciously near Gotland, a satellite signal disrupted at the wrong moment. And in that world, Sweden is exactly the kind of ally NATO needed. My personal opinion is simple. Sweden joining NATO is one of the biggest strategic shifts in Europe since the war in Ukraine began. It proves that neutrality has limits when the security environment collapses around you. Sweden did not abandon neutrality because it wanted conflict. It joined NATO because the old security model no longer felt safe. And that should worry Moscow, because Sweden is not a weak addition. It is a net security provider. It brings advanced industry, disciplined forces, powerful geography, Arctic knowledge, Baltic expertise, and high public seriousness about defense. The irony is impossible to ignore. Russia wanted less NATO near its borders. Now NATO is stronger in the north than ever before. So the real question is not only what Sweden brings to NATO, the real question is this: has Russia accidentally created the northern wall it feared the most? Because from the Baltic Sea to the Arctic Circle, Sweden is no longer standing alone. It is now part of a 32-member alliance. And with Sweden inside NATO, the message is clear. The North is no longer neutral, the Baltic is no longer quiet, and Europe's security map has been rewritten.